So I want to first shout out the Shift for having me and creating these spaces to really check in, have these important conversations that honestly, we often don't get to have the space for. And so I just want to invite everyone to take a moment here to pause and check in and see how we're doing this evening, where we're at right now, mentally, emotionally, and connect with where we're at. I know we're all hopping on this live from different places, but we're all here with the same purpose this evening to talk about mental health and specifically suicide. And so I'm going to be leading this evening session. Again, my name is Elizabeth Stevens. I am here tonight as a peer, meaning I live with mental health conditions myself. I've experienced suicidal ideation and been hospitalized for it. My family members live with mental health conditions, and I, in my professional life, work for NAMI Westside, LA as the program director. None of what I'm sharing this evening is meant to replace any advice from medical or mental health professionals. I'm going to share a bit more about NAMI in a second, but really there's so much power that I feel comes from sharing from a place of lived experience, meaning starting conversations from those like myself who have been there before, and some tools and things that helped get me through that. And a big part of that was seeking out mental health professionals. So, like I said, not a mental health professional myself, but really honored to have the space here to start the conversation. So I also want to ensure you all know there is another suicide prevention event happening on the Shift tomorrow, Wednesday, September 10th. So this is with Promise to Live. They'll be doing a live stream. And so you can find it here on Shift's Instagram or on Facebook channels during the Promise to Live channel takeover tomorrow night. So this organization was founded by a mom who discovered that a small gesture could truly save a life, and she hasn't stopped sharing that gesture since. So you'll be hearing some inspiring advocacy stories and more from them tomorrow evening, and highly suggest that you tune in and continue this conversation tomorrow. So again, this evening is a chance to try out a few exercises, kind of learn how to have a conversation around suicide, because that can be really difficult, and to also hear a bit from me, hear about my own experiences living with suicidal ideation. For this evening session, you don't need anything, just need to be here, be present. At a couple points during the exercises, I offer, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and check in with your breath. But other than that, just need to be here in this evening, and thank you all for caring enough to hop on. So, like I shared in my intro, I work for NAMI Westside, Los Angeles. We are one of about 650 affiliates of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, started by and for folks who were family members and loved ones, and like myself, live with mental health conditions. It's a nonprofit where we really focus on providing support, mental health education, and advocacy around mental health, centering voices of those who have been there. So here at NAMI Westside LA, we offer peer support groups. This means groups for folks living with mental illness, as well as family support groups, and that can be anyone who has a loved one with a mental health condition that they love and care for. We also do outreach events. We have a warm line, and I'll be sure to share that resource at the end as well. And then one program that I wanted to focus on this evening is Ending the Silence. Ending the Silence is a program that NAMI National developed that starts the conversation around mental health for middle school and high school age youth. So here at NAMI Westside LA, we presented to over 4,000 students last school year alone. And what makes this presentation for me so impactful is I can literally visualize myself as a high schooler, a middle schooler, and have seen like what a big impact it would have had to have the conversation around mental health at that age, and what that would have done for me to kind of take apart some of the stigma around mental health that I was experiencing within myself and within my family. And as the name suggests, end the silence and really start the conversation. So in our presentations, we go over really mental health 101. What is mental health? What does it look like to have mental health? And what does it also look like when we see what NAMI calls a warning sign, meaning something that we either see in ourselves or see in a friend that causes us to think that there might be something happening and we're concerned. And so we go over different warning signs of mental health conditions, and we also start the conversation around suicide. We then talk about what it looks like to get help, because that's a really scary next step oftentimes, and what it looks like to kind of within ourselves and within our friends practice positive coping skills. So for me, I'm involved in NAMI Westside LA and love doing these Ending the Silence presentations because I know how much these conversations matter and how isolating it can feel when you feel that you're the only one experiencing some distressing mental health challenge. It can be so isolating. So hoping to create a bit of that space this evening too. So before we hop in and I share a bit more about my story, I want to start off with a quick exercise and take a pause here together. So I invite you to take a deep breath in and out. And ask yourself, how are you feeling physically? Do a quick body scan, kind of see if there's any tension that you're feeling kind of built up from the day. I know I keep a lot in like my neck and my jaw, and just notice that if there's any points of tension that they're there. How are you feeling emotionally, mentally? Anything on your mind that's kind of been sitting there with the day. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say you are right now? Or if a number scale doesn't really resonate with you, is there a word that sums up how you're feeling? I invite you to share in the chat if you're comfortable where you're at. Sometimes with students, we also say, like, if your mood or how you're feeling was the weather, what would that be? Yeah, so just want to take a moment, see where you all are at. I think sometimes our days can get so busy that it can be really easy to keep asking other folks how they're doing, but not take that moment to pause and check in with yourself. And the practice of noticing how we're doing, it may seem simple, but I feel it's really powerful. And it's really the first step in caring for ourselves, which as we go into conversations about how to support others, we also need to support ourselves. Okay, so I want to give a little piece of my Ending the Silence story and my own story living with suicidal ideation. Oh, thank you. I'm actually seeing Adeline overwhelmed. Mo, I'm seeing stormy weather. Thank you all for sharing. Feel free to keep adding in the chat. So for me, in my mental health journey, I always reflect on feeling that this was something in my experiences that I was the only one going through it. And I think that when we present to middle schoolers, we hear that a lot, where they're like, oh wait, like other people experience this thing. For me, my first experience with my mental health was a panic attack. And having heard other folks who have gone through panic attacks, I think I share a similar experience with them, which was the first panic attack I had no idea what was happening. Like, to me, it was a very physical experience. My heart was racing. I couldn't catch my breath. My chest felt so tight. middle school me thought I was having a heart attack. Like, I had no idea what was happening, but I wasn't able to connect the racing thoughts and now what I know is immense anxiety in my head, these physical body sensations. And so when that happened, I remember I ran to the bathroom. I was in the middle of the class, and I kind of stayed there for about 10 minutes till it seemed to pass, and it was truly like so terrifying. And I went to the nurse, but I only described not being able to catch my breath, and she gave me an inhaler because that's really the only symptom I was sharing. When I had my next panic attack, as you can imagine, the inhaler was not the solution that I was envisioning it would be. And when it didn't work, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, like something must be wrong with me. Like, this is on me, that this isn't working. And I think this really started a pattern of hiding my mental health and learning how to hide and disguise it well when I wasn't doing well. And so my mental health really did start with anxiety and panic attacks. And when I got into high school, that's when I started experiencing my first low episodes of depression. I had days where it was really hard to get out of bed, and I would still make it out of bed, show up, and go to school, but I usually was a really good student, and it became really hard to feel engaged in class. And I really liked hanging out with my friends, but I remember it took so much energy to like chat with them at lunch and feel like I was like present in the moment with them. And I also loved cross country, so that usually marked the end of my days. And it was something I looked forward to, especially after sitting for like 8 hours. And it wasn't even the running that was exhausting. It was having to be there and socialize exhausting, which is something that I normally loved. And so for me, my takeaway was, oh, I'm a bad friend. Like, I must not care. Like, this level of, and this lack of connection I'm feeling must be something I'm doing wrong. And you're probably sensing a pattern. Like, I'm assuming all of these things are things that are shortcomings of me that I must be doing. Same for being in class and not doing well on tests or homework. I was like, oh my gosh, it's me, I'm a bad student. And this, of course, did not help the existing depression that was there. And only in retrospect have I been able to see kind of what was happening. And growing up, we just didn't talk about mental health in my family. It was definitely something that was very present. My dad lives with the same diagnosis as I do. And I think that pattern of kind of hiding it and putting on a good front for everyone else is something that was really learned and ingrained in my family. And having conversations like this, I hope, break down some of the stigma. It wasn't until I went away for college, I went up to LA and went to a big school. I went to UCLA for undergrad, and that already, oftentimes brings about anxiety, like a big move, a big change. And I had gone for years with my anxiety and my depression untreated, and my panic attacks really started to increase. And I was not doing well in terms of just trying to keep it under wraps, because now I lived with strangers. Like, I lived in a dorm. There weren't as many places to go be alone and hide what I was going through. And I'm really lucky that I found a good group of people who are still some of my best friends to this day, who so much were able to have that conversation that I would have never started around mental health. They were able to talk openly about their own mental health. They live with different diagnoses than I did. Some of them don't live with mental health diagnosis, but we all experience fluctuations in our mental health. And they were able to start the conversation by being open and vulnerable about how they were doing, even though I thought I was super keeping it under wraps. I wasn't. And so they were able to acknowledge that and set the example by starting the conversation. This became crucial in my second year, about halfway through college, because I hit a much lower episode of depression than I ever had in the past. I was really struggling with a part of my identity. I was struggling with the fact that I was queer, and it wasn't that my friends wouldn't accept me when I came out. I knew they would. I knew my grandparents, my family would accept me. They actually, when I eventually did come out to them, were like, yep, we knew. But it was me. Like, I was having a hard time coming out to myself. This stigma that I am talking about around mental health, I was also facing around my own identity as a queer woman. And while I was like, oh my gosh, like I would never feel this way about someone else, I was so hard on myself about it. And it sunk me into a really low episode of depression. I was no longer able to just kind of push through, go to class, go to work, and get through every day and kind of fake it till you make it. I became pretty much unable to take care of my basic needs. And one of my closest friends noticed that I wasn't showing up to class, I wasn't showing up to work, like, this is not you, like, something's going on. And, like, keep it all in mind, we're, like, 19, and so I give her a lot of props for it, because she showed up at my dorm, and I know now from talking with her that she was scared to do this, but she knocked on the door and was like, hey, like, I know something's happening. Like, just no judgment there, but, like, knew something was up and wasn't gonna let me kind of, like, make my way around it without telling her what was really happening. And she ended up asking me the really direct question of if I was considering suicide. And I did have a plan to end my life. And I remember being asked that question so vividly, and at this point it's like 10 years ago. And I remember debating, like, do I tell her? Do I not tell her? I don't want to burden her. That's really how I felt giving her this information would be. I thought it would be a burden. And I'm so grateful that I did end up telling her the truth, which is that I was considering suicide. And I remember she just took in that information and sat with me. We were, like, in my dorm, on my bed, I can visualize it, and we just, like, sat with that piece of information, and she, like, thanked me for telling me, and then we both were like, okay, what now? Like, we literally didn't know what to do, and that's okay. It was like we, in that moment, had done the thing that I needed, was create a space where one person knew what was happening. And even though neither of us knew what to do with this piece of information, she walked with me down to the counseling center on campus. And that's my kind of first experience getting some real tangible help. And it all started from that one question. And when I gave her that answer, I wasn't expecting her to have the answer either. It's not like I was like, yes, and now I expected her to, step in this counseling role or something. It was just the fact that someone saw the darkness that I was in, and instead of, like, leaning away, they came and joined me in it. Brene Brown has a really powerful video on YouTube that we show our family classes about joining someone in their pain and in their darkness, and it really, really was a game changer. And I think that's what this question does, of asking someone if they're considering suicide. I went on to get help. I was hospitalized over at UCLA Resnick Hospital right across the street from campus, and it was the first time that I received intensive help, mental health help really at all. And it went from, like, a deep dive into mental health from being someone who, like, never talked about it. And I met other folks who were going through similar things. We had different experiences in our lives, but we were all there because we were in a crisis with our mental health in some shape or form. And hearing other folks talk about feelings and thoughts I was having really helped take away the shame for me. And I came out of that hospitalization with the feeling of, in order to kind of do what I want to do with my life and also be there for my friends and my family who were there for me in that time, I needed to prioritize my mental health. But I also wanted to create communities where we could have these kind of conversations because they saved my life, and I found and wanted to find that community in other places. And that's where I found NAMI Westside LA. And I've been a part of that community since 2018. But that's a piece of my story there, and I really wanted to kind of hopefully share what that conversation of asking someone about suicide can look like in real life, because it's really a hard conversation to have, and also a life-changing and a life-saving one. Like, I wouldn't be here without that question. I really do believe that. So from the story I just shared, I hope one of the takeaways is that when we notice someone in our lives that we care about is struggling, the most important thing is to show up. There's always going to be, like, from talking to my friends and from asking this question now that I've been in the mental health space, there's always going to be some fear around asking that question. But showing up and coming from that place of care is the thing that matters the most. I know that sometimes when we are even in just conversations in day-to-day life and someone shares something, sometimes our brain goes to, okay, what are we going to say next? And I really want to encourage folks in this conversation around suicide, as much as you can, to turn off that piece and really be present in the moment with the person and listen to them and be there with them, because that space that you created is one that they probably have not had before, and has been created because you have built trust where that person feels comfortable opening up to you. So I do want to take, as kind of the second exercise of this Instagram Live, is to take a minute to practice asking that question of, are you thinking about suicide? Very directly. Like I said, I want to validate that it can feel scary to ask this. I've been there on both ends of the conversation. And I want to also, there's a misconception that asking the question will put that idea into someone's mind. I want to assure you that it does not. Research has shown it does not. Asking the question will not give that person that idea. Instead, it shows to that person, and like for me, it showed me that my friend was not afraid to have a difficult conversation around mental health, that they were someone safe that I could go to. So let's take a moment right now. I'm not sure where you're at, if you're in your car or in your home, but say the question out loud. Are you thinking about suicide? The more you practice it, the easier it can be to say in real life. Because in the moment, we want to make sure that we feel comfortable enough to say those words out loud and directly. We have the students that we present to say it out loud in the classes we're in as well. It's one thing that in mental health spaces I see done frequently for other things. So for example, like I shared in my story, I live with panic attacks and anxiety. Coping skills that I have around my panic attacks and my anxiety to ground myself. In my work with my therapist, I try to utilize those coping skills when I'm not in crisis, when I'm not having a panic attack. And so just like how I utilize those skills so that when I am in crisis, it comes more naturally to me, I also encourage folks to utilize this skill of asking a direct question outside of a time of crisis. And really approaching it with that empathy, with calmness, and knowing that this is the first step oftentimes into someone getting real support and real help. We don't need to have the answers, we just need to be with the person. So just as important as checking in with others, we also need to check in with ourselves. In NAMI spaces, we call it knowing our own warning signs. And so whether or not you live with a mental health condition, we all have things that kind of tune us into our mental health maybe isn't at its best right now. We all lived through the pandemic, and a lot of folks experienced depression and anxiety for the first time. And they really, like, that time, I'm reflecting back on it, there was isolation, there was so much that we were feeling. And I know for me, sometimes it's hard to catch those warning signs. So I want you to reflect on what your own warning signs might be that you need additional support. If you have your notes app, feel free to write it down. For me, my own warning signs look like becoming irritable, and I'm not normally someone who will snap at people, especially people I love and care about. But if I'm finding myself snapping at my girlfriend or my friends, I'm like, wait, why am I acting why am I so on edge? If I'm feeling like I'm isolating, and I'm not reaching back out to friends who are reaching out to me, that's another warning sign that I need help. But we all have different ones, so I want you to really reflect on them and know that experiencing those warning signs and then reaching out for help is a true sign of strength. One thing I also like to make sure folks know, and that we share a lot in NAMI, is that we are not alone and that help is always available. So I want to ensure that I also end this call with some resources so that if you or anyone you know is struggling, you have some very tangible resources that you can reach out to. So the first one is 988, which you can call or text. It's the U.S. Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and it's open 24/7. NAMI National also has a helpline that you can either call or text. It's 1-800-950-NAMI. Or you can text NAMI to 62640. So again, 988 in the U.S. for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is open 24/7. Or you can reach out to NAMI at 1-800-950-NAMI. There's NAMIs all across the country, so I know we're all tuning in from different areas, but for us here on the West Side, like I said, I'm part of NAMI Westside, Los Angeles. Anyone is welcome to come join our virtual programming. We have free support groups, classes, and you can reach our office warm line at 310-889-7200. So that office line I gave, feel free to call. We have wonderful folks who answer our lines, who are family members, peers, who have that experience, helping folks navigate resources, talk about how they're feeling and how they're doing. And so we're here for you. And seeking help really is one of the strongest things that you can do, both to support yourself or to support someone else. There's been many times I've called 988 with someone else on the line who is experiencing suicidal ideation, because making that call is really hard to do. And so oftentimes it isn't for myself that I'm calling, it's with someone else that I'm calling. All right, so I really want to thank you all for joining us today, holding space for this conversation. And I really hope it was useful and restorative for you, because there's not in my life, outside of my work at NAMI Westside LA, which I'm really grateful for, outside of that, it's sometimes hard to find spaces where we can openly talk about our mental health and suicide. Because it is a heavy topic, I wanted to end on one last mindfulness exercise that we do in our peer-to-peer classes that I also kind of have in my coping skills toolbox. It's called guided imagery. And so if you all want to take 2 minutes with me, we can close out on this mindfulness exercise. So I want you all to, if you're sitting down, like plant your feet on the ground, and like we did at the beginning of tonight's live, do a scan of your body and notice if any muscles are tensed, and see if you can kind of shake them out. Or I'm noticing in my neck, for example, mine are a bit tense from the day. And I want you to take a deep breath in and release. And continue taking these slow breaths. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And I'd like you to think about a favorite spot that you like to visit. Now see yourself at a distance, like as if you were coming from a bird's eye view at that place. Look around and notice what details are in that setting. Are there any sounds that you can hear? Do you feel anything? Is there air moving by? Now I want you to zoom in and walk into that setting that you're visualizing and see what other details you can notice. Are there any sounds? Are they loud? Are they soft? Do you notice any smells, or is there anything you can reach out and touch? Now I want you to spend a little time in this place and enjoying it. Notice how you feel and take another scan of your body. Take a deep breath. And if your eyes were closed, I invite you to open them back up. And remember that you can use this technique whenever you like. There's so many amazing mindfulness techniques out here. This is one that I use because I find sometimes that with mindfulness, my mind can really wander. And so occupying it with a space that is really feels like home or feels safe allows me something to occupy my mind with so I can go back to focusing on my breath. For me, I was visualizing my grandparents' home. They have a fireplace, and we have cats, and in the winter we'll all sit around the fire and the lights will be off, and it'll be very cozy, and like the fire is crackling, and just being with those that I love the most. And we don't even do much in the space. We just are in it together, reading, typically, maybe with a nice cup of tea. So whatever that space looks like for you, if you feel like sharing, feel free to drop it in the chat. And again, thank you so much for coming to today's session. Again, there's another one tomorrow that I know I'll be hopping on myself, that I'm really looking forward to. And if you want to see more of these shift sessions, please DM the shift, comment on these sessions, and share these sessions in the shift page with your friends. You can learn more about NAMI Westside LA, which is where I work and has a lot of similar conversations around mental health. You can find us at NAMI WLA on Instagram. You can also find us at NAMIWLA.org. And again, thank you. Let's keep having these conversations, keep creating these spaces, and one conversation at a time. I really do think we are changing the narrative around mental health and ending the silence. Thank you. Bye, everyone.